Hey guys, it's the Getting Started Late Growing with Fishes podcast, episode 20. I'm Steve,
And I'm Marty.
and we try to do this show every week. Sometimes we fail. Um, last week we had a whole bunch of technical difficulties and all kinds of issues, so sorry about that. We're going to work towards preventing that kind of stuff in the future. Um, yeah, so
Which, to be
this
fair,
week we
we've
have a
had a
bunch of
lot of
different.
different problems, but not the same problem over and over again. So,
Yes, every time we've had issues, it has always been a new issue. Be it Jamaican internet, satellite internet, random camera issues,
we had
random
one
microphone
podcast
issues.
that nobody could stream video to, and just quit on.
Oh yeah, we had one where our audio worked perfectly, but neither one of our cameras decided to work. Oh, you name it, it happens.
And then last week it just died altogether.
So
So that was
yeah.
that was fun. Just all of a sudden we're off air.
So
I'm like, oh,
I got a bunch of different pokers in the fire right now, but I don't have much I can talk about or anything that's really immediate. I have some might be back in the Caribbean. We'll know in 3 or 4 weeks. If we're gonna be back in the Caribbean sooner than later, at least sooner than anticipated, at least. And what else do we have going on? I think that's about it for now. We have some other stuff going on out here I can't quite talk about yet. And I think that's about it for now. What do you got going on? I know you got a bunch of new pictures and stuff up.
yeah, I've been posting pictures. Obviously, as they get farther in the flower, that's the more fun time to photograph. And then they just hit 8 weeks today, pretty close. And then I don't know if we can get that to focus or not. But anyway, this is a
Back
sample.
it up just a little bit.
That's the sample that I just
Back
cut.
it up just an inch or two. There you go.
And so this is just, it was like a little floater underneath anyway. And I just cut it not that long ago. But even for wet, it's pretty dense. Smells good too. So pretty excited for that. And got a couple also of the starfighter, just a couple little tester nugs. And so I'll take a look at those under the microscope and check them out. But those are always fun to just kind of test them out. But I would say I only looked at them for a little bit. I cut them about an hour ago. And so I only looked at them a little bit. But I would say, probably still need another 3 or 4 days before they're ready to cut all the way down. But yeah, and then the outdoor just started flowering since our last podcast. So top dressed with some fresh castings in the soil layer, and watered in with some tea, and made a little fruit fermentation with some kiwi and some half-rotten blackberries that we got from the market, which kind of sucks, but might as well ferment them out. So kiwis, blackberries, some watermelon rind. What else do we have in there? I think that's about it. Quite a few of those things. Anyway, so I threw that together, so I'll probably feed that. Let's see, I made it day before yesterday, so I usually like to do those for at least a week or so. So another few days, and I'll feed that. And but yeah, pretty much everybody's triggered in the flower now outside, so I'll need to cut down the inside pretty soon because they'd be overlapping and be over numbers with both of them. So so that'll get cut down relatively soon, probably like I said, within the next 3 or 4 days. The cheese I might let go a little bit longer because it seems like, and it's a mystery. We don't really know exactly what strain it is, but the only thing we know is that it's blue cheese. But just one seed out of the blue cheese plant from last year, and it happened to be female, and but it's still got a bunch of white hairs on it, and it's all clear trikes, so it's definitely going to take a little bit longer. We think it might be crossed with Lemon OG or Pineapple Express, but we're not really sure which one, and they both smell really citrusy anyway, so it's going to be kind of hard to tell. The only thing I can say is that it grows a little lankier, a little bit more like an OG, so I think I'm leaning a little bit more towards lemon OG and blue cheese. But anyway, that's the only one I haven't cut anything off of yet because it's just clearly not done, so I didn't even bother with that. And yeah, that's about it. Oh, I was gone for like 3 days and then back for a couple of days and then gone again. And so when I was gone, I had my neighbor looking after supposed to just be feeding the fish, and he's a grower. I hesitate to say that a little bit because he's a bottle baby. It's kind of what we call him. When I first met him, I would walk in and he had like Miracle Grow in his garage and stuff, and so we've slowly sort of weaned him off of that stuff, at least to a little bit more. He still buys bottles, but at least it's slightly better bottles, I guess. So anyway, I had him watching over it, and so he decided that he also needed to like refill all of my fish tanks. So he refilled everything up, but obviously he didn't know to put in an EPH down. So for like 4 days, my plants were at like 8.5 pH. So yeah, so I lost a few leaves on the bottom. They just yellowed out by the time I got back, and they were all curled up. He's like, "Oh, I think they don't like the heat." And I'm like, yeah, well they don't, but they also don't like 8.5 pH. So anyway, I got that corrected. So everything, they're straightening back out, and everything's greening up again, and it just faded a little bit and lost a little growth. But the kale was fine though. Like all the kale and vegetables and stuff was like, meh, no big deal. I mean, I'm sure their growth rate slowed down a little bit, but they didn't really seem to care in terms of they didn't show any yellowing or anything like that. But anyway, so yeah. Other than that, the soil garden's looking good. I added in, I did swap out, I had one clone that was like not really performing and wasn't really doing that well. Like it was not even a quarter of the size of other plants that I put in, it's same size. And so I think it must have had like a root issue and it transplanted or something. Anyway, so I had a couple extra plants. I pulled it out, swapped in another one. It was pretty much the same size and is going to overtake it in growth just because it's a more healthy plant. So luckily I have good friends and lots of plants, so I just tore that one up and threw in another one. And I threw in the extra plants that I found that I can have with my permit. So that was kind of cool. Going, since I already paid for the permit, I figured I might as well have as many as I am allowed. So I threw in another 6 plants on top of what I had in already. So originally I thought I would be still limited to 10, but since I'm paying for the permit, I get approved for up to what I had previously, which was 3 total cards. And at the time there was no rec, so 3 total cards would have been 6 plants each. That would have been 18 plants. So technically I'll be able to have up to 18 plants. So that was kind of nice. So I threw out some extra plants that I didn't have in the ground because I didn't think I would be able to. I thought I would, even with the outdoor permit, I thought I'd still only be able to have 10. So I got those in the ground, and yeah, just kind of trying to get a lot done. And that time of year, everybody's setting flower, and now's the only time to give them that boost in the beginning that they need to have to really do a good job. So at least I'm glad that it happened right around the beginning of flower in terms of like the pH lockout and stuff. It's not a terrible time to have it happen. They had a good long veg in before that. So yeah, I think everything's going relatively well. The outdoor soil garden is definitely looking great too. It didn't get quite as much water as I would have liked it to have when I was gone also. That was kind of another thing that was frustrating about, letting someone else take care of your garden for a few days be stressful. And so they were really thirsty when I got back, and it's been really hot, so it makes sense. And they just need to get a lot more water than what they did. So I've actually been kicking it up now to watering them twice a day, um, and doubling the amount of water that I'm giving them and they've recovered really well just in the last, probably 4 or 5 days. And they weren't really bad to begin with. It was just, you could tell they weren't getting the same level of growth, and they were getting a little droopy at the end of the day after the long heat, all that stuff. So I wouldn't say anything drastic, just not ideal. And yeah, but I think right now I'd say everything is pretty much ideal. All the systems are balanced again. I don't have anywhere to go for a little while, and probably won't ask my neighbor to do that again. So yeah, that's about it for here, I guess. And trying to think if there was anything else I have going on. I have a couple of starfighter plants that I think I'm gonna veg for a long time, like probably like 2 months, and try to grow like 2 big plants in my indoor, just to have like I don't know, just say I've done it, I guess. Just to contrast the difference between doing 4 smaller plants versus 2 larger ones. And then I can keep the indoor system running while the outdoor is flowering, as long as it's in veg, and I can maintain both systems. So I still have, I think, 2 more starfighters that I'm going to put into veg, and probably do just 2 plants in my indoor, and grow them to pretty good size, and try to fill up that whole net with just 2 plants, which won't be that difficult. I think the main reason I didn't fill up the net this time on the indoor was just that I didn't have enough time to let them veg before they had to start flowering in order to finish on time. Like even now, they're probably going to run a little bit late, like a week or two of overlap versus flowering with the outdoor also. So, just time constraints. But so to keep the indoor running while the outdoor is flowering, I'll veg probably 2, maybe I'll do 4. We'll see. But I want to fill up that whole net on the indoor this time, and run the same amount of lights, because I think I could yield a lot more if I was able to veg them just a little bit longer. So that's the overall plan for me anyway. Just kind of take it as it goes, though. We'll see what happens. I still have a pre-98 Bubba and another mystery she's mom that I may end up doing something with also. So we'll see. We'll see. I like pre-98 Bubba. Have you had that before?
Yeah, it's a really good one. I haven't had it in a while.
Have you ever grown it in aquaponics?
I haven't.
Cool. I always like new strains. So,
yeah, absolutely.
So anyway, that's what I got going on. What do you got list on your? I know you had some news articles you want to talk about, right?
Yeah, there was a bunch of cool stuff in the news this week, more than usual. So, the U.S. Justice Department can no longer spend money to prosecute federal marijuana cases if the defendant complied with state guidelines that permit the drug's sale for medical purposes. A federal appeals court ruled today. So that means they can't even spend money to prosecute you as long as you follow the state law. So if you're a medical patient in a state, they can no longer use or prosecute you with federal money. They can't even spend money on it. That was a huge victory today for the cannabis movement, especially the medical movement. It was one of the last things that needed to happen to help really curb any last federal prosecution of legal grows. So I apologize about that. So we had another one, which is the government refuses. Oh yeah, so the DEA decided to decline reclassifying it, although they did. They are going to allow more than just that one Mississippi Research Center. So we'll see what happens with how that all plays out. But it's better than nothing. But it is kind of ridiculous that they couldn't at least deschedule it. down to something more reasonable. I mean, it should be completely descheduled, but that's besides the point. Um, Another big one that happened over the last week is the stingray. Uh, so a federal judge ruled this past week that the stingray, which is a tool that the police use to steal people's cell phone information, it gives them all kinds of information on it. Their use is questionably legal by a whole number of reasons. But a federal judge ruled that their use and cell phone location data that is gathered by your cell phone provider is all they have to get a separate warrant for that. They can no longer just drive down the road and blanketly scoop up everybody. They have to actually get a specific warrant for a specific person and say we're going to use the specific area for the specific person at the specific time and place. They can't just go willy-nilly blanketly getting these open-ended warrants anymore. So that was a huge victory in terms of some of the ridiculous crap that they've been pulling in some cities as far as predatory actions on people that are not bothering anybody.
Right. So, for instance,
in a large number of cases.
Right. So, for instance, they would set up surveillance in an area that had a dispensary, for instance, and then try to be able to monitor, phone calls, all kinds of different stuff of people that were going into the dispensary. I think it was, I can't remember. I know the article you were talking about. I think there was an instance of maybe it was in Colorado where they were basically just like camping outside the dispensary and trying to track people going in and out of there and get busts off of it. And obviously that's not what we want our tax dollars spent on. So seems like there's better things they could do.
Absolutely. And then there was a cool article I wanted to bring up, and this was on newscientist.com, and they did this whole genomic study of cannabis and like ancient cannabis and its travel, how it traveled, and then they like overlaid that with a bunch of different agricultural methods and what year they hit, and as well as a couple of other different civilization markers, and they found that it heavily overlapped with when cannabis was introduced into their local culture. But the title of the article was pretty awesome. It was "Founders of Western Civilization Were Prehistoric Dope Dealers," which I just thought was it's a little clickbaity, but it's pretty funny. And how there's a lot of really cool research that went into it, and I'll post the links to these articles in the description there. But I just thought it was pretty neat and pretty funny. Bring that one up.
Yeah, the one
actually had
we didn't really get is good stuff. It's like good history too. Just shows you how long that stuff's been around. Like like somebody asked in a different group the other day, they were asking, how long, when did dabs start? Because he smoked in high school and they didn't have dabs then, they just had weed. And it's like, well, I mean, dabs is just sort of a general term, it's not, like extracts have been made for like thousands of years. Like
but they haven't really been smoked. They weren't smoked until about 800 AD. At least as far as smoking, it was always eaten. They would eat hash.
Right. But still, it's still an extract.
Yeah, it's absolutely true.
So anyway, it's just I just think it's an interesting thing. So I guess for people that don't know, a lot about it, obviously, pretty much any sort of, for the most part, when somebody says dabs, they're usually referring to like BHO or, some sort of like hash derivative. But yeah, so I think that it's just funny that we come up with these different terms to sort of reinvent the same thing. But it's been going on for a long time, really. And that's kind of what that article hits on, is like how they, it was an entire trade industry. It was a, sought after commodity as opposed to a banned substance. And obviously, so much
Used
more
in
than what it could be.
sails and rope and all kinds of useful things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially the, ropes, and even like I was reading about how they would use it, like the resin from hemp, to be able to like patch ships and stuff, because once it's hardened and at sea, the water is always so cold that you pretty much can't, plus if you ever try to clean your bong with cold water, you'll know exactly what we're talking about. That shit's just not coming off. So basically, they make resin out of that stuff to be able to patch their boats, and it worked great.
Giant bongs out of whiskey barrels, and they'd all sit there and smoke until they had enough resin to patch the boat. And then, if somebody shot a cannonball, they'd be like, power smoke the. That's good.
So obviously, seawater is going to be cold all the time, so they really had no issues with it, like warming up and coming loose and stuff. So it was a great thing, a great commodity for them to have, because if they needed to burn down some hemp to make some rosin or resin or whatever you want to call it out of it, if they wanted to sort of cook it down and be able to patch their boat, it was a great thing to be able to have. So was very versatile. And then obviously for ropes and stuff, before nylon, it was pretty much the go-to for large scale ropes and stuff like that. So, a lot of the books that talk about the different conspiracies behind outlawing cannabis is nylon being invented around that time and having influence over certain government officials at the time. So nylon,
the cotton industry claimed to ban it as well.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, I definitely think that it's so versatile, and so cool to see like different ways that it's been used throughout history for way more than it's being used for now. At least in most places, obviously here in Colorado, and even where you're at there in California and different places like that, you can use it for a lot more stuff, but still not nearly the potential that it could be. There's still I think a big market for hemp to fill in terms of paper products and different hempcrete building materials, a lot of stuff that we were just starting to scratch the surface on.
Absolutely. We didn't really get a chance to hit the questions last week because we're not really sure what happened. It said live on my screen, and then suddenly it stopped working on Marty's, and then we're not really sure what happened when the thing went dead. So we didn't hit the questions last week, so we have a bunch of questions, so we're going to hit those next.
Cool.
So did you have any questions first, I guess, before we go through the list that I got?
No, I don't think I had any this week.
Okay. So do you know the specific episode where you go through feeding between veg and flour? I might be able to answer most of my questions. We haven't done a specific episode on that yet, but I have a bunch of stuff on fish food and fish feeding and all that stuff coming up for this episode later, assuming we have time to fit that in tonight. If not, we'll hit that next episode. Right now we have stuff on that. Right now I have a veg tank filled with guppies, eating mostly veg-based food, and my flour tank is filled with goldfish, since goldfish are easier to feed live worms and such. So the guppies and all that are going to not provide a whole the flowering tank's the one you're going to feed much more veggie based and plant based, rather than the veg room. The veg room and the veg tank, you're going to want to feed a lot more protein and a lot more insects and a lot more meat and that kind of stuff, frozen foods, that kind of thing. And then it says, do you have a particular recipe for what to feed the tilapia and veg and flour? I don't have a particular recipe, but I will get into different insects and stuff like that. Um, did you want to add anything to that?
Um, you kind of broke up there, so I'm not sure exactly what. I don't know if it was just my connection or what, but I don't know exactly what you said. But anyway, um, obviously just looking to lower the nitrogen content when going into flour. Um, so you can do that in various ways. Like the food that you feed them is obviously a good idea to change that up, like you were talking about. And I also use like companion planting, so I'll plant stuff that I know is going to use nitrogen in the system and be sprouted about at least the first few weeks of flower, so that I can get a good set after that. And for me, I know I have excess calcium and I have hard water, so I like to add things like kale, for instance, so that I don't have to worry about like doing water changes. So basically, as I add water and it evaporates, if I don't use up the calcium and it starts becoming excess, it can lock out other nutrients, or the total hardness of the water can start going up. And so I want to use up that calcium if possible. And so kale is a great way to do that, because it eats up a lot of it relatively quickly, and will grow sort of to scale in terms of how much is present in your system. So if you have a lot of it, it'll grow a lot. If you don't have a lot, it won't grow as fast or as big, but still does relatively fine. So I grow a lot of kale, and plus kale chips are amazing. So there's always that. Easy to make.
Heck yeah.
Little garlic salt.
Barbecue kale chip. That's what's up.
Yeah, good stuff. So yeah, and then I grow a lot of greens too, that like chard and stuff like that. Just regular lettuce, I find is fine, except for when it gets hot, it bolts. So obviously that's a little bit more difficult unless you're doing it inside. So the indoor, I do some lettuce and like spinach and stuff like that, because I don't have to worry about it bolting. But outside, definitely I don't do lettuce out there, except for like I have I think it's called butternut lettuce, or butter lettuce, or something like that.
Butter crunch.
Butter crunch, that's it. Butter crunch lettuce.
Yeah.
I got from the local farmers market. First of all, it's delicious, and second of all, it doesn't bolt, and can handle the heat a lot better than regular lettuce does. So I do have some of that in the outdoor right now, and it's doing really well. So yeah, I think that that's the only thing that I would add, is that especially if you have hard water, or if you have a lot of fish, that you can definitely need to lower the nitrogen in your system, and consuming it is a great way to do that, rather than cutting back on feed. So unless you can cut back a lot on feed, or take some of the fish out as you go into flour, or some way to reduce the nitrogen, and I find the best way to do that is to consume it with leafy greens and then eat it. So that's I would say that's probably the guidelines that I follow between veg and flour. And then I changed what I put in my worm bin too. So
yeah, seeding.
Sorry, go ahead.
Seeding watercress and other things like that as well. When you transition into flour, right beforehand, is another great way to help suck it up near the end. Right.
And then you get a lot of good enzymes from sprouting a lot of seeds too. So I do a lot of like microgreens. I have a microgreen mix from the local farmers market that has like spinach and all kinds of stuff. But anyway, you get a nice release of enzymes, kind of like a sprouted seed tea, right in your beds if you just sprout them in there. So and microgreen seeds are great, because you can just spread them out, and you don't have to care if each one of them sprouts or anything like that. So you just kind of toss them out, roll them in. I like to dig down to where you get to that the layer above the water level, but it's still damp. in the media, and I put my seeds right in there, and I pretty much, I think I get, I would say at least 90% sprout rate, and don't really have an issue with that. If I notice that some of them aren't sprouting, then a couple of times I'll just come through and put some water over the top of them for a couple of days straight, and then I'll find the rest of them will pop pretty soon. So, so yeah, I think that's probably my veg to flower transition. And then my worms, I try not to give them any leafy greens or anything that's going to create nitrogen in my worm bin during flower either. So I actually have separate bins that I feed from. I have one that I put leafy greens in, and then the other one gets primarily fruit scraps, like the fruit fermentation I was talking about earlier. When the fermentation finishes, all the leftovers from that will go into the worm bin, and they'll eat what's left over from that. And then, the usual banana peels, apple cores, peach pits, pretty much whatever we have left over that we normally just throw away. All the fruit goes into the flowering bin, and the veg gets all the leafy greens. So I'll feed that to like my outdoor systems when they're vegging. I'll feed that tea to my outdoor soil garden, my vegetable garden, all that kind of stuff. So 2 worm bins is definitely a good idea. If you don't have 2 different worm bins, then I would definitely just suggest trying to adjust the best you can in terms of what you put in there at what time. So when you start flowering, just try to keep it to fruit, and maybe store up your veggies in bokashi bucket or something like that, to where you can just kind of hold off on that nitrogen, because you don't want to add more nitrogen into a system that already has a nitrogen rich system. You're just kind of shooting yourself in the foot, unless you have, I guess, a lot of square footage to grow, a lot of leafy greens to consume it. But yeah, that's kind of my basic strategy for transition and managing it. Mine's a little more homegrown style, obviously. For you guys, when you guys are just dosing stuff, you can just change what you're dosing, obviously. And I don't know, do you ever dose nitrogen? I can't imagine you do, right?
No.
And veg.
The only time I'd even think about it would be while I was cycling the system just to grow stuff off the bat.
Right.
You can run kind of like an organic hydro while your system's cycling just to get stuff going immediately, but it's
Sure.
about the only time I'd ever consider it. I mean, maybe if I just for some reason had just like massive plants and later veg that I just were struggling to keep the nitrogen high enough, but I could feed the fish 5 times a day. You know what I mean?
Right. Right. Why would you? Yeah, it just doesn't seem like it, unless like maybe you just harvested a bunch of fish, for instance, or and we're trying to veg a whole bunch of plants. I mean, I guess if you were, I've just never had that where I guess where I didn't have enough, and I go with such low stocking density as it is. There's only like generally 4 or 5 fish in my systems for 6 to 7 plants if we're talking medicine plants. And then my front porch, that whole system only has, I think there's 4 goldfish in that one right now too. And so I just can't imagine it would be that hard to just throw some more in there. Oh, did I lose Steve? Your video's locked up. Yep, I did. I don't even have the thing open, so if you're talking to me on chat, I can't see it. There we go. Oh, Steve is gone. Are you back?
Hey, I'm back.
There he is.
I'll make sure that we're still alive. Make sure we didn't end up with a total crash. Cool. We're still good. Yeah, all right, we're back. Just wanted to confirm after last week.
Yeah, that last one was weird. Normally you can come back, or I discovered when I when I watched some of the other videos back that even when you drop off, I'm still live. So, and
Yeah,
it actually
your
shows.
connection to the server is independent from mine.
Yeah. So anyway,
So
so we were talking about transitioning from veg to flower and all that, and then like why you might add nitrogen, which would just be that if for some reason you didn't, that you couldn't get more fish, or you couldn't feed them any more often than you're already feeding them. Maybe you have a solids issue, but then again, if you have a solids issue, you probably don't have nitrogen. You're not lacking any nitrogen because you should be able to break that stuff down. So, the only thing I can think of is if you were just, really trying to veg a lot of plants on a very, very small amount in a new system. So maybe your nitrification ecosystem hasn't quite evolved yet. So you might need to dose a little bit extra. And I don't think it's bad to dose a little bit, like especially if I think that you're obviously going to get some in any sort of like compost tea, or I'm sure I get some in my worm tea anyway. So I don't think it's bad to add some as long as you have the plant load to absorb it. So that was one question somebody had asked me at some point. I don't remember when, but where just when you might add nitrogen, and that was the only thing I can think of too. Would be a new system that hasn't quite got its bacteria established yet, or you would just need to veg a whole lot of plants in a small system, or big plants, I guess. Could be that too.
I have a question for our viewers. Where the heck can I host our podcast? Or does anyone know how to set up an RSS for the podcast so I can get this thing up on iTunes and some other places that all of y'all keep requesting us to host on? Like 3 different people asked me to host it. I'm happy to, and I just don't know how to do the RSS thing or find me another website. So if someone can point me to the right direction or leave a comment, that would be great. Fish Ganja Guy, because he likes to write all the cannabis shows every week. Even though he was on Monday and Wednesday this week over on Dude Grows, so I gotta poke him. I know him in real life, so I'm gonna make fun of him a little bit. He writes, in the soil zone of my DR system, I'm doing veg at dried out, the normal rate, and now in my second week of flower, I've been noticing the soil has been staying damp much longer. Do you think the additional weight of the plant gained during stretch has caused it to slowly sink into the hydrogen? Hold on. What are your thoughts on this? I would just shift it up just a little bit. So I don't know if you're spinning your pots, but what I do is I normally give my pots like a half or quarter turn every 2 or 3 days. And it just keeps the plants rounded off up until, I'm going to scrog them. Now, if you've already scrogged them, then what I would do is just try to lift that pot up just a little bit, or even just depending on how your access. If you have easy access to your standpipe, pull your standpipe and just take a little bit off of it, and just lower it just a little bit, which should be super easy if you have a normal bell siphon, or depending on what you're using for your flood level, you should be able to reduce it just a little bit without too much of an issue. To adjust for that every once in a while, especially if your plants get really massive root systems, sometimes it will. But I think I've seen that happen maybe once or twice, and I just attributed it to when I transplanted them over to the flowering room. I pushed them a little bit down too far, but that's the only time I guess I've run into that.
I would say that if you find your water level raising from what it did before, there's a good chance that your drain could be partially blocked, and you'll find that your water level is slowly creeping up. And so it probably doesn't have much to do with your transition into flower, other than that your plants are bigger and your root systems. I find in aquaponics, root systems just generally go nuts and take up pretty much as much room as you can possibly give them. So You know, like that's what happened in one of my systems, my outdoor system, the one with the biggest plant in it. It literally just with roots alone, a 2-inch drain out was just packed solid through roots. And I noticed that the water level had started to creep up, and noticed that the top of the media was starting to just stay a little damp in the mornings and stuff. So that's why I started to look at it. And so I pulled that out, and you know, just growing down the drain was probably like 4.5 feet long worth of roots. And so if you let that go, eventually it will just clog up and start overflowing your bed, or you know, cause other issues with your siphon to not be able to run at least as efficiently. So check and make sure that you don't have roots growing down into your drain. Even if you're keeping media out of it with like a media guard, if you have a bell siphon, that can be an issue. Like I have a net pot that sits over the top of the inlet, which keeps media out of it and clogging it up great, but roots grow right through it. And so in this case, it was just a massive root ball. So that would be my other piece of advice, is that if you have it, you know, if you notice it getting wet and staying damp now, and it wasn't damp before, you know, you might have an issue with clogging. You might want to check your drain, because that can be an issue. No matter what, you'll just keep pulling it up, and it'll keep getting wet until, you know, you'll notice the water levels all the way at the top. So check on that. Other than that, I would say, you know, kind of the same thing Steve said. You can lift it up and turn it a little bit and try to get some media to settle down underneath it, and that way you can be able to set it down on top of that. And as long as you can do that and you don't notice the water level creeping up, you know, that should be fine. The other thing you can do is cut like a PVC spacer and put it underneath your pot so that it won't sink down on top of it. But yeah, I would say that would be the only other thing I can think of, and I don't think that's really going to help you right now, because odds are you have a huge root ball underneath there, so you're not going to be able to put a spacer underneath there very easily. But for the next time, you know, you could give them little spacers underneath to make sure that it doesn't sink down at all, and just have that be more of a static height. But yeah, check your drain. I would say that'd be the only thing I have to add.
Alrighty. We had another question, which is the true aquaponic 3-week nutrient dose sufficient to grow cannabis? Of course, you may need to add more than one batch. So for that one, the true aquaponics dosing batch, along with pretty much everything else you're going to see on the cannabis market at the moment, is designed specifically for leafy greens and vegetable, like lettuce, basil, low nutrient requirement crops. So while it definitely will help you quite a bit, don't get me wrong, it's not going to quite get you to those proper levels.
Be great for veg.
But yeah, I mean, decent for veg, but you might want to double it, like you're saying. Well, it kind of depends. So the 3-week veg, I've actually talked. I know Roger, a blend of different things like iron, potassium, a couple of other things, and depending on what you currently have, you wouldn't want to double up on iron per se, because that could start causing you calcium issues and all that, which is, everything has to be in the right ratios, which is why if you start going willy-nilly with some of the stuff, it can get kind of, and you don't know what you're doing, you can cause a lot of damage. But if you do know what you're doing, you can really tweak it. So it just depends on, you know, how experienced you are and how much research you've done on the topic. On that particular one, but you don't, you know, you wouldn't want to double up or put double the amount in, I guess is what I'm trying to say with those packs, because for one, you'll overshoot your iron.
Right. So it's, you know, like it just, there's some things that wouldn't be a problem doubling up on, but some of them will be. So you can't just straight double everything.
Yeah.
So I think you'd be better off getting a, you know, like a some of the key to life nutrients or something like that that is a little geared more towards the crop you're trying to grow.
Yep. Or it depends. I mean, he's got a lot of great stuff, but again, you're far better off in dosing individual nutrients and knowing what you're doing, or using a full blend that's designed to work with you, like a two-part that's designed to work with itself, where everything's kept in ratio, or a three-part, or any something like that, or looking at your plants and saying, oh, they need potassium, or oh, they need this, or oh, they need that, or making a good base blend based on a known formula or something that's out there, and then just accounting for things like nitrogen, zinc, copper, and a few others that you know. Yucca is another good one that'll kill your fish pretty quickly. Especially in California, the natives here used to use the yucca extract for fish stunning. Pour it, and concentrate it, and pour it in a river and stun the fish to catch salmon and stuff. So,
Yeah, they
another
definitely
one was ever heard of the? Good.
I was just gonna say they definitely have a lot of individual, fish safe ingredients, and that you might be better off, like you were saying, learning about those independently as opposed to just trying to double the one that he has there with the pack. And so
Yep.
I think there's a lot of information out there about, we've talked about it before about, and we even covered a little bit in this episode in terms of, more nitrogen in flour, so more nitrogen in veg and more P and K while you're in flour, and definitely adjusting those. And pretty much how you do it is kind of, up in the air, but you want to supplement those things individually as opposed to just double all of that stuff, because you're, like you were saying, the base elements don't stack evenly like that. So definitely check out a lot of their fish safe stuff, because what's great about all the stuff that you'll find over there with Roger's stuff is that you don't have to, he does a extremely thorough job of filtering out the stuff that is not fish safe. So that's a great resource for people that may not have the time to go through all that stuff, or just will enjoy the fact that they don't have to. So it's a great place to go for that stuff. And so I don't want to discourage using his weekly thing, or however it is that he does the group stuff. All I'm saying is that learn about the individual ones and dosing those, or maybe we can talk to Roger about having one set up specifically for cannabis, like week one flower or something like that, so that people don't just double up on that stuff. I'm sure you'd be open to that. What do you think?
Yeah. One time I was working, it was always funny working at the different places, and we had somebody dump like 8 or 10 times as much aqua KH up, I think it was, in their system, and because it was a bicarb and the amount they did, and he started off at like 8.2 pH, it like only raised it to like 8.4 or 8.6, and like just made his water super hard and had no other. But like if he had super acidic water, he might have had an issue. But it just happened to be like super lucky. This guy was really the way he messed up, and his starting point for his pH. And it was just like, wow, man, like you really dodged a bullet on that one.
That's funny.
Uh, so all right. So they got another question, which was, ever heard of those small scale high yield farms? I'm thinking of doing some basil and AP and herbs and selling to restaurants and such. Any advice on the subject, gentlemen? Um, I mean, there's lots of different small scale, higher yield models. The biggest thing when it comes to like that kind of stuff is researching the heck out of your local area and finding out what you can grow and what type of season to make decent amount of profit. And that's kind of the biggest thing that people don't do. that they really should when they're trying to do these aquaponic farms and aquaponic, you really need to go talk to your local chefs and restaurants and farm groups and whatever, and find out what the demand is. Dinner party chefs are another really good one. And unless you talk to them and get what they want, you know, I know there's a big market with the dinner party, cannabis dinner parties and stuff. So maybe if you can find someone that's doing that and get them their veggies and their cannabis, that'd definitely be something that I would highly recommend. Who knows? Maybe you can.
Yeah, I have a buddy that actually has a small aquaponics farm in Ashland, Oregon, here just a little bit south of us here. And he runs the aquaponics meetup group, and I met with him a few different times. He's a great guy. I actually bought my half barrels from, well, I guess they were full barrels at the time. I bought my poly barrels from this guy, and gosh, was that like 3 or 4 years ago now? So it's been quite a while. And anyway, so he runs a small one where he did just that. He went around and talked to all the different chefs and stuff. Ashland is kind of like a niche market, it's sort of like I don't know, like a small scale Aspen, Colorado, if you will, yeah, like a wannabe, though they don't quite have that much money. So
are they a People's Republic or? No, I'm just kidding.
So they have a niche market there where they have quite a few sort of, I would call them like uppity restaurants and stuff, to where they want a variety of different microgreens, basically, to be able to cook with. Like they want, fresh greens that they can dress up and use in their dishes and have them consistently. And so, obviously they love having that stuff. And so what he runs into issues with is just growing enough variety and getting the volume just right. It's not like all of them will want one particular thing. So you have your basics, like your different leafy greens, like spinach is obviously one that he does a lot. Basil, he does a lot. And then, but like pea shoots was the one that he was, surprised that he got a lot of demand for. And just be able to adjust sort of what you grow, just to be able to kind of adjust to the market. So when they want, when you bring them something, if you grow some new sort of like red leaf lettuce or something like that, just be prepared for them to be like, I need 10 orders of this twice a week for the next 6 months.
Yep.
They'll definitely, you got to be able to transition from, to what they want, because nobody wants their menu to get stale. And so they'll need to, kind of change it up. And so maintaining a variety while still producing quantity, can definitely be a challenge. But I feel like that's what you have to do in that sort of small scale market.
So we had a question on the chat. So how viable would banana or banana skin ferment fruit skin juice be for supplementing potassium? Supposedly dry banana peels are around 40% potassium. So they are around 40% potassium, but that's only if you like sinter them, which is like freezing and powdering them or burning them or otherwise drying and powdering them. And then that potassium is only so much available. And even then you're still talking like thousands of, you'd have to, maybe if you had a banana plantation, it would make sense. But there's just no, you can do it, but you're not adding enough to, it's not going to add enough to actually make more than like a single ppm difference in your water is the issue. Now, as far as using them for skins, for ferment juice and all that, making ferments, absolutely, they're good for that. But again, you're not adding a ton of potassium. You're getting a little bit, but you're not going to add all that much.
Yeah, I don't think from the skin you get all that much. Definitely, if you have some like that go bad, for instance, and the fruit is still there, then in your fermentations, I think you'll probably get a little bit more like actual potassium content. But either way, they're a great fuel source for microbes. So when you put them in a fermentation, you're probably, even though you're not getting like a high, we'll say like numerical value of potassium, you're still giving them a great sustainable source for the fermentation to develop more microbes and spread those. So I definitely recommend doing it, and I definitely recommend putting them or just feeding them to your worm bin, because it's a great easy way to break them down, and obviously throwing them away is just sort of a waste. So I would definitely add them, but I wouldn't necessarily just rely on them either. If you want to go for your ideal NPK sort of setup, then you're definitely going to probably have to add something like kelp, for instance, would probably be the go-to supplement that I have. And so I always take the sort of laid back perspective in terms of dosing stuff. So unless I see the plant having an issue with it, I'm generally more reactionary to feeding as opposed to dosing. So I've only used it a few times, but I do use it primarily in my outdoor soil garden for feeding my soil when I do fermentations out there too. So definitely not by itself, but if you eat bananas anyway, you might as well compost them and just use them in your worm juice. I would say it would be the ideal way to deal with them. I don't know if I worried about like drying them and powdering them and like trying to get as much potassium out of them as I could. I think you could probably, spend some time doing some other stuff. It would be more beneficial. And kelp is really cheap, so like a good solid maxi crop, will save you a lot of time. I think it's maybe like $12 for a, I don't know what size bag it is, but it's not that much. So I would definitely save the banana peels, compost them, but I wouldn't spend a lot of time trying to like get as much as you can out of them. Just throw them in your worm bin. If you don't have a worm bin, get a worm bin. And yeah, red wigglers. I just got mine from a local farmer's market. They're cheap. You can use a lot of different stuff. If you want to kind of look at something for a model, I think is it Earthworm Jim, Uncle Earthworm Jim, something like that. I think Earthworm
Jim
Farm. They have a pretty cool worm bin.
Earthworm Jim's Farm.
I think that's what it is. So
no, it's Uncle Jim's Worm Farm. Earthworm Jim is a video game for Sega Genesis.
That's right. Cross wires there. Too much Starfighter. So anyway,
Earthworm Jim's Farm.
Right.
We should write. If you ever order from him, make sure you tell him Marty told you want Uncle Earthworm Jim, not just Uncle Jim.
That's right. So Uncle Jim. And they have red worms, and they also have a great design for a worm bin, which you can make your own. Just kind of get an idea of how how they're set up in there, so that you can know how to feed them and maintain them, and have a lot of information on them. And you can order worms right online. I actually did order some from them. They came through, shipped just fine. They got here. Basically, take them out, give them water as soon as they come out, and get them into the worm bin as soon as possible. There's some DIY videos online for how to do like a series of like 3 or 4 or 5 gallon buckets that you can rotate for a decent worm bin, just by drilling some holes in the bottom of them and setting up some mesh or different layers. So and then you can just sort of stack them on top of each other and pull them apart as you want to sort of refine down into the castings in the bottom, and the water can go through to the very bottom one, which obviously doesn't have holes in it. So check out some of those videos if you want to, but that's a great way to break down pretty much all of that fruit waste, whether it's banana peels or other stuff, and some of that stuff will surprise you. Like I found out, I think I mentioned this on the episode before. Kiwi actually has a significant amount, almost as much as banana peels do, um, of potassium, which I thought was pretty interesting. So when I was at Costco the other day, they had a huge thing of kiwis, and so I was like, all right, well, I like kiwi anyway, so chopped them up, and all the skins and stuff like that all went into the fermentation, and it definitely had a, the fermentation smelled nice and sweet, and it had some great life establishing on top of it. So um, yeah, I mean, I haven't used it yet, so I can't say for sure, but
Sweet is a relative term with ferments.
for ferment, it was sweet.
Yeah,
There's a
it was
sour
sweet
smell,
smelling.
like a
It wasn't actually sweet smelling. Just to
yeah,
clarify,
well,
you haven't done it before.
more like not sour smelling as opposed to sweet. But definitely, like especially with like labs or EM1, I definitely feel like it gets a little bit like borderline sweet. I wouldn't be like black coffee with regular sugar sweet, like not like Starbucks sweet, but definitely I guess more just not rancid or sour. And so it's got a couple more days left, but it's already got a nice layer on top. It's getting some good like natural aeration, some bubbles popping up. So you can definitely see it going to work. So let those microbes grow for another few days, and then dilute it down and feed it in. And so yeah, that's a great way to do pretty much break down whether it's banana peels or whatever. Um, it's a great way to break stuff down, whether it's in your worm bin or the fermentation. Um, it's all very useful, I think. Just not by itself.
Yeah. Another good potassium supplement, if you're looking for something that's natural and organic, is langbonite, which is potassium magnesium carbonate, which is basically Epsom salt plus potassium, which is a naturally occurring mineral salt. But it's perfectly fine. No sodium in it, so don't worry when we say salt. It's not always a bad thing. Which a lot of people mistake that for thinking sodium all the time.
Right.
Potassium sulfate's good. Potassium carbonate, potassium bicarbonate, potassium silicate. My big one. I'm a big fan of potassium silicate as pH up, and potassium and silica booster. So also a natural occurring mineral. So the next question was, I believe this podcast will be powerful. Oh, blah, 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 blah. Sorry. Um, okay, so give us the bare bones on a grow nutrient schedule to grow quality organic medicine. Maybe something that anybody can get started learning how to pH their water with phosphoric acid. What is the best given through the soil layer, and what is best given through the AP layer? Budget-friendly options. Um, that's a pretty wide open question. Um,
How do I do it
we
all?
actually did do a 101. Yeah, how do you do absolutely everything? We actually haven't done like a hardcore nutrient or nutrient listing episode, which at some point we'll get around to doing. It's something I need to sit down and plan like the week beforehand and do, have a bunch of stuff laid up and all that. But we did do a 101 an episode or two or three ago, as far as equipment and getting started and all that. But we'll kind of do like maybe I'll maybe try to set up something next week and maybe just try to cover veg or like early plant life, like the first month of a plant's life or something like that. Maybe try to do it like plant time period wise. That might make more sense. You know, I don't know. We'll figure it out. But I think that might be a better way to cover it, um, because that's a pretty open-ended question. But we'll definitely figure out a way to answer that. It just kind of is we'd be on here for another 3 or 4 hours if we actually answered that as a podcast.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna
What
like.
is the best given through the soil layer? Good.
Well, I think I've because we've gotten this question. We talked about the aquaponics 101 or whatever, and trying to figure all that out. And so I think what I'm going to do is do like a slideshow because I have pictures from pretty much every stage along the way and doing, like almost like a narrated slideshow of,
Marty's gonna give a presentation, everyone.
yeah, because it's just so hard to like stuff all that into like one episode or
Yeah.
and not miss something. And so, um, yeah, just too many rabbit holes, I think, to get sucked down in. So I think I'll probably do something like that, um, maybe in the next few weeks. But other than that, I don't, like you said, it's a pretty open-ended question. Like, as far as like what's best through the dual root zone or not through the dual root zone, I feel like that's, I don't know. Like, I would say that it kind of depends on what you have. If you're dosing stuff like, if you've got rock phosphate, for instance, that's primarily powder, then probably the best way to use it is make sure it gets to the cannabis plants is to feed it into the dual root zone and water it into the top, once a week or something like that. If you're just adding, like a compost tea, for instance, then I probably just pour it into the media bed because for the most part, if you're feeding microbes, I just try to cover as much surface area of the media I can to try and establish as much of that microbial life as possible. So I do put I do feed some compost tea into the dual root zone, but I definitely wouldn't put it all through there, I guess. But I'm sure it wouldn't be
Yeah, so
terrible if you
like stuff like iron.
go
Yeah,
ahead.
iron, potassium, some of your micros are uptaken stuff that wants to be in a non-oxidized form, so like iron and some of your other stuff um, is better uptaken via your root zone or via the water. I have a bunch of stuff on this, but this gets pretty technical. And again, I think it would be better for a more in-depth episode, maybe just on part of each of these topics or something like that.
Yeah, I would
So
say
we can
your
focus.
heavier minerals you would probably want to get into the soil so that they stay a little more contained as opposed to like, if you're feeding stuff that's water soluble, then you could pour it into your sump tank if you want to, and I just don't think it's going to make that much difference. But you know, that's that's my own personal opinion, I guess. But I've done it every way. I've done it. I've added to the sump tank. I've added it to the media, and so I think that all of them can work. As far as like what's technically the best, I'm sure Steve has some study on it by now.
Yeah, we've done quite a bit of research on what to dose where and all that. So, um, what else here? So we had a couple fish food questions this week. I wanted to touch on a couple of different fish foods and why they're good or bad. So we had the first couple, which is duckweed and azolla, which are common fish foods that people push out there. They're decent, and they have high protein, but they're only high protein if you dry them. Um, so the other issue they have is they'll take over your grow beds and everything else. So if you do use them, you want to freeze them or dry them in the sun and kill them first that way, and then feed them. I've never used them much as a long-term source. I use them for a while, mostly Azolla more than the duckweed. Um, but yeah, it it helps quite a bit for it can help as a supplemental feed, but it's not very good long-term fish feed or main fish feed. You could definitely use it to make a paste or something like that if that's what you wanted to do. Another one is trimmings and prunings from your plants. That's definitely one you can do. But again, they're not going to get a ton of nutrition on it. Don't count it as a staple source, but giving them a few every day and to munch on is not a bad thing at all. I know do that in most of the grows that I do. They love it, and they're gone pretty much instantly. Um, this is mostly stuff for home grows, but other ones are cockroaches. So cockroaches such as dubia roaches and hissing cockroaches are great sources for fat and protein, and that are really good for that kind of stuff. If you're looking for something that's is easy to raise, really high yield, um, quick turnover. You can take all your plant scraps, your roots from your when you cut off your lettuce and you're doing your lettuce heads. Take your roots, feed it to them. It's great. Their manure is really good, and they make great fish food. Throw them in a Ziploc bag. Throw them in the freezer for 30 minutes to stun them or kill them. Then dump them in the fish tank. They're real good fish food. Um, Earthworms, which we talked about, and the red wigglers. They're great. You can do them in a worm bin or right in your grow beds. If you're doing them for food, you'd be better off putting them in a separate worm bin, and doing it that way, rather than maintaining a separate colony, rather than trying to dig through your grow beds all the time. And other ones that you don't see as much, but they're beneficial are bloodworms and blackworms. They're great for eating the detritus and the junk in the lower part of your media beds, and getting some of that mucky, scummy, junkier crap out of your system, or in addition to your filtration, to get additional filtration out of your system, to get additional solids breakdown. They're great. They really seek out those anaerobic zones, put little tunnels into them, and help break them up and get more oxygen flow into those and help get rid of them. So they're really good, good for that. Another one you can introduce to your grow beds or as a fish food for baby fish is grindle worms, Grindal. Grindle worms. They're small, great for fish food, especially smaller fish. You don't hear about them as much, but you can also put them in your grow beds. And they're just kind of smaller than the red wigglers are, as far as just trying to fit a different niche in your media. And then you have microworms, which are a super small eel that can be a little bit tedious to raise, but I've raised a bunch for fish feed, for baby fish and fry. And then you have vinegar eels, which are, if you ever heard of like mother of vinegar, it's that's all those are, is some vinegar eels, um, which is a type of uh, little thin organism, type of fluke, I think, or something like that. But they live in vinegars specifically, and they can be strained for baby fish food as well. But those are all really good fish feeds. Soldier flies are another great one, that are pretty easy to raise once you get the initial colony going. They do require UVB to maintain their life cycle long term. I know there's a few companies out there now. I know there's what is it, the Bio Box or Bio, I forget what it's called. There's a neat little self-contained soldier fly production unit, and there's plenty of DIY models out there as well. But if you just want a whole unit, you can get them. And the guy is really awesome. He came and did a presentation for us at one of the festivals I was at. Really great guy. Um, speak can't speak highly enough of him, and really funny to be around too. But definitely think about giving his website a shout. I think it's Bio Barrel, Bio Bucket, something for the soldier flies. And then there's crickets, which can be a little bit trickier to raise unless you're familiar with how to do it, but they can also be raised on a pretty large scale. Brine shrimp are another one that can be great fish food for smaller fish, especially if you're doing a lot of tropicals. It can be great for boosting color before you send them off to sale. And live bearer fish, guppies, swordtails, platies can also be another great, easy to raise fish feed for some of your larger fish species.
Get a couple questions pop up in chat too when you get a second.
Oh, sure. On the subject of fish food, can the food you feed your fish affect the nutrient content of your water, not including the uneaten fish food breakdown? Um, so yeah, actually, so the more protein and the more meat you give your fish, the more nitrogen they'll produce, and and this is just kind of general rules. These aren't like exact, but they're in general. And then the more plant material you give them, the more phosphorus production you'll get, and you'll kind of get more phosphorus and that kind of stuff. So that's why we tend to switch their diet to more plant heavy when we switched into flower or in the flowering system. We tend to have more vegetarian type diet for the fish or more vegetarian fish species. Um, but we've done a little bit of testing on it on some 500-gallon systems. At some point, we'll have to do some more testing on some larger systems, but that's something that I haven't had a chance to test on anything larger than about a 500-gallon system. But it was to the point where we were able to get some testable data out of it that we were showing up a good, you know, I would say 8 to 14 phosphorus parts per million higher on the heavy plant system after 2 or 3 months, consistently, um, versus in purely based on diet. But that was a pretty one nutrient in a minor dosage. So um, it's something I'd like to test out further um, in the future.
And if you're just
All
using
right.
store-bought food, then obviously you can, they have pretty much all of, well, I think all of them have a guaranteed analysis on the back that will tell you not just the ingredients that they use to make the food, but the guaranteed analysis will tell you what percentage of that content is phosphorus derived. So, usually it's like, 1 to 2% or something like that on just like your cheap koi foods and stuff like that. So if you go to I go to my co-op and they have different types of fish food there that range a little bit more in terms of more or less phosphorus content. So definitely check out the guaranteed analysis on any fish food that you're just going to purchase at the store.
Yes, that's what's important is the guaranteed analysis. That's what the label has to prove up to 2 years. Just so you're aware what that means by guaranteed analysis. It means that the product is going to have at least that much of a nutrient or XYZ after 2 years. Usually 2 years. Some other products are longer. They can be rated for longer, but it's a minimum of 2 years for most products. Um, we had a question actually on Facebook. Is moringa a good food source? Moringa is a great food source, but it's something you have to dry in powder. Um, I guess you could feed the seeds directly to the fish. You could absolutely, that and spirulina both are great for both fermenting and for adding nutrients to your ferments, as well as adding, if you're just going to add something to your food paste, if you're making up like a dough or your own pellets or your own fish flakes or that kind of thing. It's definitely a great additive to add a lot of vitamins and minerals and that kind of stuff, and is definitely prevalent in quite a bit of both the South and the U.S. as well as other parts of the world. It's very fast. I know I saw groves and groves of it in Jamaica. Um, and it tastes really good too. If you take the seeds and they're dry and you take them off and you skin them and they're the right age and you eat them, they're really good. They're nutty and kind of sweet. I don't know, they taste good. If you grind them up and make a powder and you mix it with tea and a little bit of sugar, it's really good. We used to eat that all the time in Jamaica, or drink it all the time. Sorry. Um,
I don't know what Mad Rebel is asking about there. Something about the biopod question mark. Do you know what he's referring to?
yeah, yeah, that's the little. Hey, Silver Arm, how's it going, man?
I know, right? Is that buddy?
All right, Silver Arm, you need to hit us up. I'm in Cali now, and I think you're out on the West Coast here somewhere. So let's try and get together in person sometime. I should be down in SoCal here at some point in the next 3 to 6 months. So let's try and set something up. Yeah, as for those of you who don't know, Silver Arm 32 is another YouTuber. Has got a lot of YouTube videos out on aquaponic cannabis. Definitely go check him out on YouTube. His YouTube channel is Silver Arm 32. And he has a
Yeah, he was
bunch of
actually the only one
pretty
that I
neat,
could find.
going back a couple of years.
Yeah, he was
Yeah,
the only
man.
one I
Yeah,
could find online when I started doing mine. So it's cool to see him hanging out with us tonight.
yeah. We tried to get him on the show a couple months ago, and we'll try to get him on the show again here soon. Um, As you
He's
can
an
tell, we're still
elusive
having a little
creature.
bit of stability issues. What's that?
I said he's an elusive creature. He'll disappear for weeks at a time and then pop back up with new videos.
Yep, yep. He'll be like, "Hey
Those are
guys, here's my full grow out." No, yeah, we're just screwing around. We like him though. We enjoy watching his videos. We're
anyway. So
fans.
what's the biopod that Mad Rebel's talking about there?
Oh,
I
so
missed
the
something.
biopod is a soldier fly. It's a self-contained unit for growing soldier flies, and it has like a little soldier fly larva will crawl up an incline. So it has like a little auto harvester bin so that you can dump them
All
into your
right,
fish tank or into your chicken thing or dump some of them back in. So
you can
it's just
take
kind of
like
an easy little self-contained unit.
my buddy that does that has the aquaponics place in Ashland. He has a huge black soldier fly thing, and he basically made his own sort of little way of kind of doing an auto harvest himself. And he takes a milk jug, and if you take the handle where you have it, and you leave that on the top, and you cut down. Basically, you cut big rectangle sections out of it, but you leave a little bit at the bottom so that they'll crawl into it, but they can't crawl back out of it. And then you put almost like they just take like some fish food and put it in there as like bait, and they'll crawl in. The larva will crawl in to eat it, and then you know within like 20 minutes or so, you can come back and pull it up, and it'll just be full of. And then you can throw what's left of the fish food and the the larva in all at once. So that way you get it before they develop that hard shell that grows on in that second stage, and then they don't. You know, the fish kind of can turn their nose up at it because it's got that hard shell on it. He says sometimes they don't. At least the catfish don't like to eat them once they get the hard shell on them as much. Whereas the small larva will just crawl in there real quick and not be able to get back out. And then you can just pull them out and throw them in all at once. So if you just cut big sections but leave a lip at the bottom so that those small guys can't crawl out of there, you know, it's almost like a crab trap in a way to where you know they can crawl in but they can't get back out. Use a little fish food for bait. So definitely cool.
Yeah, just so you guys are aware, the product I was talking about is called the Biopod. So definitely check out biopod.com. And the guy that owns the company is super awesome. He's like a goofy Willy Wonka version of Bug Guy. He's really cool. He gave a really awesome presentation a couple different times that I've seen different presentations, and just a really cool, funny guy. I think he is a whole bunch of roaches. The last time I saw him, I gave him a huge roach colony. So I think he might even have some of my roaches still. So
Cool.
Silver Arm says, well, just been busy the past 4 years working on all over the United States, but love you guys. Love what you guys are doing. Yeah, Silver Arm, we'll get you on the show here soon. We gotta love to have you talk about your experiences as well. But germination. So I had. Did you have anything else to add to what we were talking the food stuff? What else? And then there's also pellet feeds and all that are out there. Are both
Yeah.
organic and non-organic. There's only one certified organic from a company out there called ABC Organics or something like that, and there's only one vendor, which is Aquaponics Source, that I'm aware of, unless somebody else got an aquaponic food handling license. I heard a rumor that Allied Aquaponics was selling stuff illegally out the back door without a license, but uh, I don't know if that's true or not. But those rumors are going around, so um, it'd be interesting to see. The FDA has been cracking down on all that kind of stuff, so if they are, they're not going to get away with it very long. Um, what else? Yeah. So, is there anything else to add for food, or anything else that you add for your food?
No, just you know, if you're buying it, stick to the guaranteed analysis. I prefer pellets, I guess, over flakes because you know it just seems like that.
Less messy.
Yeah, it's just less messy.
Doesn't get all powdered and mucky and make your water all nasty as quick.
Yeah, and
And
it's
if you have a catfish or two in there, it makes it easier for them to, something to keep it clean.
And I guess I feel like it's slightly easier to overfeed flakes than it is pellets. Um, so I would say that's my only preference. And they sink too for like for the catfish, for instance, it's kind of nice. I don't have to worry about that. But I'm sure when they got hungry, they come up and eat it anyway. It's not that big a deal. But you know, it doesn't like especially I have one system in which my main fish tank overflows uh, into my sump tank, and then everything gets pumped out of the sump tank. And so in that system, I don't like flakes at all because the system will just float some of the food right out of the system before the fish can eat it. So I kind of have to stand there and throw out a little bit at a time, whereas the pellets will just sink to the bottom. I don't have to worry about them just overflowing into the sump tank. So just little stuff, I guess, you know, is more like a personal preference thing. So that's why I get pellets. And again, you know, if you're just going to buy some, you know, try to, you know, do a little bit of research about what's in the actual food itself. And then if you're just going to grow your own, then obviously any of the insects that we talked about are, you know, are going to be great pretty much any way that you want to feed those. And there's lots of information online about black soldier flies and all that different stuff that we just talked about. So I think that stick to that stuff and you should be good. I think that pretty much covers the food aspects.
Awesome. Well, I had two other things I'm gonna add, but it's starting to get kind of late, so I figured we'll push those to next week for topics. I figured we'd touch on. We had somebody asking about germination and some tips on that. And I have a couple different things for that, and then we have some more equipment discussion that I had to bring up, but it's starting to get a little later, so I figured probably start to wind stuff down. I had a
Yeah,
couple of quick announcements.
yeah, go ahead.
So if you guys go to aquaponicpodcast.com, it takes you directly to our page over at the Dude Grow Show now. I set that up so that we're gonna get Marty's stuff set up over there at Dude Grows so that you can kind of find me or Marty or Vlad or um, anybody else if there's anybody else out there that's doing a whole lot in AP growing and stuff like that. Maybe Silver Arm or somebody else. We're gonna set that set up as kind of like a portal for the time being, as for all aquaponic cannabis production and people and blogs and talk and all that. And a big shout out to Scotty and the dude for allowing us to do that. You go to Dude Grow Show /aquaponics. That'll take you there. And yeah, we're gonna work on it. We have another thing in the works that'll be set up called Aquaponic TV. We're gonna try and set up a conglomerate where it'll show a bunch of different aquaponic cannabis channels. You know, all in one YouTube feed or whatever. I guess there's a way to do that now. So I got that set up, and we're going to set that up with that URL, and that'll be really cool. So you kind of see me and Marty and whoever else is going on stuff all in one easy place. Again, we're all about supporting the community. We're not here to just push our own crap or anything like a lot of other things there, other media outlets are. So um, I wanted to mention that stuff that we got in the works. And yeah, definitely check it out. My channel's Potent Ponics. You can email me potentponics@gmail.com. Um, yeah, I guess that's it from my end. What do you have? Anything else?
Oh no, just check out the YouTube channels, like you said. Mine's the AP Meds, so definitely check that out. The Aquaponic Cannabis Growers Facebook group. You can, I try to keep a little bud pouring up there as I go into flower, so definitely check that out if you want some more shots of that. Watch my harvest video coming up, I would say probably in the next week or so. We'll be chopping down the indoor, probably except the cheese. We'll probably go a little longer than that. The mystery cheese. So yeah, keep an eye out for that. And updates on the outdoor will go up on the YouTube channel. And yeah, I think that's about it. Aquaponic Cannabis Growers Group on Facebook. Hit us up there. Yeah, I think that's it. Uh-oh, did I lose Steve? He quit before the end of the show. So lazy. anyway, so we'll probably shoot for around the same time next week. Steve's show with Duke Grow should be up, and I think oh, he just dropped off altogether. But anyway, so Steve's channel is Potent Ponics, so definitely check him out over there. Oh, and he's back, maybe. Steve, are you
Sorry
there?
about that. I crashed right at the end.
Oh, there
Yeah,
you
I
go.
crashed right there at the end.
I think we
I
stayed
wanted to
live
add one
the whole
other
time.
person. There's one other company I wanted to plug real quick. There's a cool guy in the Midwest. If you guys some extra bucks and you guys want to donate to somebody doing something cool, there's a guy out in the Midwest got a group called I Go Ponics, and
Oh,
he's building basically like an art mobile, like a mobile aquaponic mobile. He has one that's mostly built. He's trying to finish up the funding and stuff, but yeah, he's trying to fund that. So definitely look him up on Google and give him a couple extra bucks if you got anything, because
and he's come a
he's
long
trying
way
to
too. It's
teach
not
kids all
like
about aquaponics. Yeah,
some new like whim thing. This guy's like he's almost there.
yeah,
So
he's got
definitely,
pictures of what he's got built already and everything. So check him
yeah,
out, see what he's doing, and throw him a couple extra bucks if you got it. So
yeah, for sure. It's a way cool project. And actually, I think we talked about it on one of our first podcast episodes quite a while back,
yep,
also, and he had already been doing it for a while then. So that's definitely awesome. So yeah, I highly
yeah.
recommend you got it, donate it for sure.
There's one other group I wanted to plug real quick. Let's see if I can get it to come up. I think they're called 151 Farmers, based out of LA somewhere or San Diego. I think it's San Diego, 151 Farmers on Facebook or on Google. I think it's on Facebook. They're another kind of aquaponic cannabis slash vegetable production group. I don't know if they're specifically aquaponic, but they're kind of like a cannabis vegetable production um, aid group thing. I don't know. You'll see. Check out their website and you'll see. Bunch of cannabis, bunch of veggies, bunch of good stuff happening for people. So
Oh, and
that's
Adam
what
from
cannabis
Weed
is
for
about. Is helping.
Warriors, I want to give him a quick plug
Oh yeah.
for being on the show last week. We kind of crashed out on that show last week, but I want to give a big shout out to him and big thanks and check them out. Weed for Warriors. Um, he's in Illinois in particular, so you can definitely take a look at them. And they're on the Dysfunctional Veterans channel and Facebook group, and I believe they have their own Facebook group too as well. So uh, I know I posted some of their links on their stuff from last week, so you can check out that podcast from last week. But just wanted to give him a big thanks and shout out for being on the show, and I'm sure we'll have him back soon. We're talking about having him on tonight, but he had some other stuff to do, so hopefully we'll be able to get him back on soon. And had a blast with him, and
Yeah.
he had a blast on the show. And so it'd be cool to get quite a few of us on the show at the same time, like us and him and Vlad was fun. And I was on their show, and they have a lot of characters too. Like there's some guys that I know want to get on the show and just haven't lined up yet, but there's a handful of them that do their podcast, and it it's a riot. They get pretty tuned up. It's a lot of fun. So I think you'd have fun too. So definitely
We
look for that coming up.
we're gonna do a live stream from a secret location here in the next couple of months. We were gonna possibly do it last Monday, but some stuff happened schedule wise. But I was talking to someone that has a pretty big aquaponics farm down here, and we're gonna get to interview them there at their farm and everything at some point here in the next couple weeks.
Cool.
Well, I'm not sure exactly when we can schedule, but when I'm down that way, we're gonna pop in what should be here before too long, and
Is it a cannabis farm or
go
like
talk to
a
them.
food
And
production?
no, it's not cannabis at the moment. Well, I don't think they're doing cannabis in
Not
the near
not
future, but
primarily.
it's a pretty big, yeah, it's a pretty big aquaponics thing, and just be cool to walk around, and I can set it up on my phone, and we can do like a walk around, look at a bunch of cool stuff, talk to it, take people's live questions. I think it'll be pretty cool. Um, So
I'll talk to Drew about it. That he's the
yeah,
guy that has the aquaponics farm in Ashland. It's only about a 20-minute drive, so maybe I'll talk to him about. I'm sure he's got internet there. He's got his office and stuff there also. So maybe we can get a little Wi-Fi set up there in his little aquaponic farm. It's not huge or anything. Like I said, he grows a lot of greens and stuff there locally and provides some catfish and stuff there. But it'll be pretty cool to see a small operation. That's been going for a few years now. So he's definitely got some stuff figured out and learned some stuff along the way. And he's even got like the old original system that he built quite a few years ago. I want to say like probably 4 or 5 years ago now. And he always likes to go through and explain all the stuff that's wrong with it that he built better in the second system. So that might be a cool sort of episode if I can get him to basically go through it and just outline some of that stuff that he ran into. Like he had some huge media beds that just, he didn't have basically any filtration at all and had some huge stocking densities trying to maintain his catfish. And so definitely ran into some issues with the media beds getting clogged up and the red worms not being able to keep up. And, a lot of that stuff, like once he hit like the second year and stuff, he has a whole rundown of stuff that he did differently in his second system. So it's kind of neat to see because the old one is still running and it's still there, but, he'll tell you about how he had to shovel out like encrusted media with, like just nothing but catfish shit in it and stuff like that. So there's a lot of good lessons that he learned along the way. Hopefully I can get him to share some of that stuff on camera. But I know last time I think he opened up because I got him pretty stoned when I showed up. So maybe we'll have to go that route again and see if we can get him to open up a little bit. Again. But I'm sure we can arrange something. We'll figure it out for sure. So anyway, I'll talk to him about doing that.
Alrighty,
and maybe on site.
We'll get going, and thanks everybody for watching. Okay, that sounds great. Alrighty, we'll get going. Thanks everybody for watching. Just sure to check out Marty's channel at AP Meds on YouTube, mine and Potent Ponics, and we'll see you guys again next time. Take care.
Have a good one. Thanks a lot.